Hello, my name is Anita Thompson. I am a digital engineer for the Nevada Department of Education. I'm also a middle school computer science teacher in the Clark County School District. Today, I'm going to introduce you how you can create digital math activities for littles. Now, this will be done in a series of 3 parts. Part 1 will focus on number sense. And all these activities can be done for asynchronous and synchronous learning with students. So we're going to go ahead and get started with creating our first activity, and that will be 10 frames. So I am going to be using Google Slides for this, but everything I do here can be replicated in Microsoft PowerPoint as well as Apple Keynote. So first thing is first, I am going to change the layout to a blank. That way we don't have any of the boxes in our way. And so to create our 10 frame, we are going to insert a table. So I'm going to come up here to insert, and I'm going to go over to table, and we're going to create a 5 by 2. Okay. We can adjust the size so that it's big enough for our little's eyes to be able to see it clearly. And then we can also change the border color. It defaults to gray, so we can change that over to black, as well as change the thickness. That way it is easily seen. And here we have our 10 frame. Now, those of you who are second grade teachers, you may start off with the teen numbers or move into the teen numbers quickly. So we can actually create a double 10 frame. So to do that, I'm going to kind of adjust this one, maybe make it a little bit smaller so they both can fit. And then I am going to duplicate this. So you can go Control or Command D if you're on a Mac, or you can go to Edit, Duplicate. And there we have our second 10 frame. So, with our primary friends, they like to click things, and sometimes, unintentionally, they delete resources that have been created for them accidentally. There is a way to prevent that from happening, and to do that, we're going to download this slide as an image. So I'm going to come over to File, and go over to Download. Now you can use JPEG or PNG, either one is fine. My preference is PNG. And then it automatically downloads for you. So then you can come up and you can give it a name. And then I always change it to where it downloads to the desktop. That way it's easily retrievable. You can move it to your documents. You can leave it in downloads. It's up to you. So you can just give it a name and then save it right then and there. So now I'm going to add a new slide, change it to blank again. But this time I'm going to click on background. And then where it says image, I'm going to select choose image. I'm going to leave it in upload because I saved it to my computer directly. Click browse, and then I'm going to look for my document or my image. So I saved mine under double 10 frame. So now I have my 10 frame as an image, and no matter how hard they click or delete or press anything, it's not going away. It is permanent on this slide. So now we can go back to our first slide, and we can delete that because we don't need it anymore. So now we're working with our permanent 10 frames. Now we can create the counters. So we can do that by using shapes. And then we can just create little medium-sized circles, just making sure they fit nicely within our boxes. And then we can go over to this paint bucket and change the color. So I will be creating red and yellow because counters, they come in red, or red on one side, yellow on the other side. So you can create both sets. Now I have my first one, so I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste my second one, Control C or Command C, and then Control V. I'm going to move that down here, and I'm going to change this one to yellow. That way it's already ready for me. So right now we just have one of each. But if we want our students to use this, we need to have multiple counters readily available for them. Now to do that, we can copy and paste. So I'm going to copy and paste. For this one, I'm going to copy and paste 10 red counters and then 10 for yellow as well. If you are using a single 10 frame, you can do 5 and 5. So I'm going to start off with copying my red and then pasting 10. So here, okay, it's just making sure I have 10. Okay, so we have our 10. Now, we don't want to leave it like this. This does not look nice at all. It doesn't look pretty. So I'm going to show you how you can make it appear that your counters are stacked on top of each other. So we're going to give it that illusion that they're just all nicely stacked. To do that, I need to highlight all of my counters individually. So the first one's already highlighted, so I'm just going to hold Shift and click each one. So as my blue box expands, it is indeed highlighting each one individually. Next, we're going to go to Arrange, and we're going to go to Align, and then we're going to click Center. Now, they're nicely in a line, but we're not done yet. So I'm going to go to Arrange one more time, click Align again, and this time I'm going to click Middle. So now they are neatly stacked on top of each other, even though it doesn't look like it, but when students start to move it, they'll see that there's another one right under it. So we can do the same thing for the yellow ones. Create 10 as well. So again, Control or Command C, and then Control or Command V until you have 10. And then highlight each one individually by holding Shift and clicking the next one for each. Then we're going to go back to Arrange, go to Align, click Center. Then we're going to go to Arrange one more time, click Align, and click Middle. So now we have our yellow and our red counters ready to go. And again, I have multiple here for students to use. Now, those of you whose students use iPads at your school, this can be done very nicely for them, seamlessly for them, in which they just use their finger to manipulate the counters, and it works perfectly. So as students begin to understand that one-to-one correspondence, and they're ready to move on to, they're creating their addition stories and their subtraction stories, and they're ready to move on to actually writing and solving equations using the 10 frames. You can use the speaker notes down here to write out your equations. Now, for those of you who want your students to use large, or for those of you who want your students to be able to see the equations better, you can create text boxes along the side and then type out your equations there. So for our kinder, two plus three. For our first grade, maybe 7 plus 3. For second grade, 12 plus 8, and so on. And of course, depending on your students, they can use either equation. Now, you can also have your equations set up ahead of time in which they can be included in your background image when you create this slide. That way, students can't accidentally delete any of them as well. And then for your students to actually solve the equations, you can just have text boxes created right next to each one, so that all students have to do is just click right there in the box, and then they can type in their answers. And then it's just right then and there for them. So that concludes creating 10 frames. So now I'm going to move on to creating base 10 blocks for students to use as another manipulative. All right, now I'm going to move on to creating base 10 blocks for your students to use as an additional manipulative. So first thing is first, we're going to change the layout to blank again. That way we don't have those boxes in the way. So you can create base 10 blocks in multiple ways. For kinder and first, I highly suggest you creating it the first way I'm going to show you. And then for students that have that concrete understanding of what a base 10 block, what a rod looks like, then I'll show you the alternative, which is a little bit easier to make. So I'm going to start off by using shapes. So for ones, we can just use cubes and then change the color to yellow. And then we have our ones. And then you can copy and paste. So you have a series of ones. The students can manipulate with their mouse, trackpad, or with their finger as they count. Now to create tens, we're going to use cubes again. We're going to make them a little bit smaller though. And I'm going to copy and paste 10 of them. So now for these ones, we are going to stack them. And to do that, we're just going to put one right on top of the other. Now, if I leave it like this, it doesn't actually look like a rod that students are familiar with or that you would introduce to them. So we can fix it. So the cube on the bottom, I'm going to click it, make sure it's highlighted, and I'm going to go to Arrange, Order, and click Send to Back. So now it looks more like an actual rod. There we go. And then I'm going to do that with the remainder of the cubes. Now I'm going to do it each time I add one to the bottom. It's very important that you only do it to the bottom ones, because if you do it to the top, it's just going to revert back to how it looked in the beginning. So this is the main reason why this one doing it this way takes a little bit more time. However, you only have to do this once, and I'll show you why in just a couple seconds. Okay, last one. All right, So here we have our rod. Now with kinder and first grade, they need to be able to understand that 10 cubes makes a 10. So now we only have to do this once because you can group all of these. Now to do that, just click. We'll start with the top one, holding Shift, and then click each individual one under it. Make sure you hit all of them. Excuse me. That way they're all highlighted. And then hovering your mouse somewhere within it, right click, and then select Group. So now when you move them, they move as one. And then you can copy and paste, and you have multiple 10s, and they're all as one. For kinder and first grade, mainly first grade, if you're able to get to the 100, when you get to the hundreds, you can just put them together like this. Since they're three-dimensional, it's can't really make them appear as one flat. But again, just providing that instruction and helping students to understand that 10 rods equals a flat, or 10 tens equals 100. Now for second grade and for first grade teachers as well, because you will get students that develop that understanding earlier than others, sooner than others. You can create rods doing it this way, which is a lot easier and quicker. Just using the rectangle shape and then just clicking and dragging. Then of course changing it to yellow. And there you have your 10s. Same thing with your hundreds. Just draw your big square, change it to yellow, and you have your flat, your hundreds. Now again, this is only for students. I only recommend this for teachers who have students that already have that understanding. That 10 ones equals a 10 and 10 tens equals 100. With second grade also, your grade level gets to the thousands, so you can just create a giant cube to represent your thousands. And so students will have base 10 blocks to manipulate. Now, again, you can create equations with this as well. Create a text box and write out your equations. You can use this for 10 more, 10 less, 1 more, 1 less for students. And then you can also use it for your 20 plus 1 equals 21. Oops, forgot the 1. Equations. And so forth and so on. So this concludes creating base 10 blocks to use as manipulatives. Part 2, I will go more in depth with using base 10 blocks, and I'll also introduce how you can create a hundreds chart. And we'll also cover greater than, less than, and equal to. If you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you so much.